December 24, 1982 afternoon, Changsha Datop Airport. A plane of Chinese civil aviation is at the airport, waiting to take off. The direct flight is a I-28B passenger plane. The aircraft left the factory in 1959, 23 years old at the time of the incident. It is a very old aircraft. The direct flight route was Changsha to Guangzhou. At that time, there were 11 crew members and 58 passengers on board. At 14:02, the plane received permission from the tower to take off. The plane took off on time from Changsha Datop Airport. The weather in Changsha that day was as clear as a blue paper, a few thin white clouds, as if the sun had melted, slowly floating with the wind. Passengers roamed in the picturesque blue sky. The mood also became relaxed after more than 2 hours of smooth flight. 17:01 p.m., the plane entered the near corridor, beginning to descend in altitude, preparing to land at Guangzhou Baiyun Airport. The airport tower informed the crew of the real-time weather at Baiyun Airport. To the crew, wind direction 360 degrees. Wind speed 5 meters per second, 8 layers of base clouds and 950 meters high, visibility 9 km, normal temperature 17 degrees Celsius, and asked the aircraft to land from south to north. The crew said they received and accurately attached the instruction. 17:18 when the aircraft crossed 5 sides and flew to the far platform, a passenger sitting on the left side of the 12th row of seats in the passenger cabin noticed a cloud of smoke suddenly coming out of the left side of the porthole, immediately screamed. The cabin crew chief was informed as soon as possible. The flight attendant saw that this was no small matter, quickly ran to the captain to report, then a flight attendant went to check the smoke. By now the smoke had begun to spread, seeing the fire tend to grow. The captain and the navigator rushed to get the fire extinguisher, but I don't know if the fire extinguisher was not used for a long time or the fire extinguisher was fixed too tightly. Captain and navigator, after a period of time to tinker, finally did not take off the fire extinguisher. With no choice, the captain had to turn around and go to the cockpit, tell the pilot who was flying the plane, co-pilot, to land the plane as soon as possible. At the same time, the flight attendant and crew began to guide the passengers to the 2 hatches to move away from the source of the fire. In fact, the airliner had 4 escape doors, but in order to increase the passenger capacity, an extra row of seats was placed at the escape doors, so that all 4 escape doors were blocked. After the crew learned that the cabin was on fire and smoking, they thought it might be an electrical fire. The crew then reported the fire in the equipment cabin to the ground, requesting an emergency landing at Baiyun Airport. The deck agreed to the pilot's request. The co-pilot then turned off the main power. The cabin was depressurized. Let the air pressure inside and outside the aircraft balance. A few minutes later, the plane landed smoothly at Guangzhou Baiyun Airport. In order to stop the plane as soon as possible, so as to evacuate the passengers at the first time, just after the plane grounded, the emergency brakes were applied, successfully stopped the plane at the No. 3 liaison entrance. Due to the urgency of the landing, after the plane stopped, the airport's ladder truck was not yet in place. The crew had to lower the working ladder from the front hatch, as the working ladder was simple and steep. Passengers had to slowly crawl backwards to get off the plane. The pace of evacuation was slow. Just as the 11th passenger was climbing down the plane, the smoke in the rear cabin suddenly increased dramatically. The tumbling smoke immediately turned into a dense fire. Seeing the sudden increase in fire, the originally orderly evacuation line immediately became chaotic. Driven by the instinct of survival, there was a spill in the group. Many people were knocked to the ground. The passengers waiting for the ladder at the rear cabin door saw the fierce fire. Forced to jump from the plane, passengers still waiting at the back were gradually dazed by the smoke. The smoke then completely transformed into open fire and spewed out of the cabin door. The airliner was completely in flames. The plane evacuated passengers from smoke to open fire in just over 2 minutes. The plane was evacuated from smoke to open fire in just over 2 minutes, because the fire spread so quickly before the fire trucks arrived. The duty crew of the apron arrived at the scene to try to rescue, but because the fire was so intense and accompanied by thick smoke, the rescuers did not have to enter the cabin of the aircraft to rescue people, and the driver of the airport fire truck was not on duty because it was dinner time. It took until 17:33 to arrive at the scene. By this time, the fire had been burning for 10 minutes. It was 3 minutes before the fire truck from Guangzhou Fire Brigade arrived. 3 minutes earlier, The fire burned for 1 hour at 18:20 before it was extinguished. The accident caused 25 people were not evacuated in time, burned alive. After the investigation, it was found that what caused the plane to catch fire. Neither a short circuit in the electrical wiring nor a leak in the piping, nor was it arson. The tragedy was caused by an unlit cigarette, but that was not extinguished, in fact, in the 1980s, on board the airliner. Not only was smoking not prohibited, but passengers were also given cigarettes. Each seat had an armrest with a massage for cigarette ashes. Occasionally, small boxes of 5 cigarettes were distributed on the plane as a typical when changing boarding passes. Staff will also ask if they smoke. In summary, the investigation team gave the cause of this accident. There was a passenger smoking near row 12 at the time. After smoking, the passenger accidentally knocked the ashtray down on the seat slide and the cabin wall. Between the seat rail and the cabin wall, the ashtray was then blown under the floor by the airflow, and the paper scraps hidden under the floor, carpet and other combustible materials were ignited. And this location is just in the location of the air conditioning exhaust duct. Then by the heating air in the cabin and ventilation, airflow of flame retardant, gradually from smoldering to open fog, ignited the canvas cable sheathing of the cargo compartment and the baggage compartment. Flammable items such as textiles in the luggage cargo eventually led to a fire.